Hidden away in a secluded cabin, she thought she was safe, until the Mafia boss showed up. My name is Elena Marlowe. And for 2 years, I thought I had disappeared. When I left New York, I promised myself one thing. I would never look back. No phone. No friends. No family. Just me. And the sound of the wind against the trees. I found this small cabin deep in the Vermont woods. It wasn't much, just 4 walls, a creaking floor, and a fireplace that groaned every time the wind howled. But it was enough. Enough to make me believe that maybe the ghosts of my past had finally stopped chasing me. Every morning, I'd step outside with a cup of coffee, breathe in the cold air, and watch the mist rise from the snow. There was peace in that, the kind that doesn't ask questions. I chopped wood, I wrote in my journal, I watched the seasons change. No one knew I existed. And for the first time in years, I felt safe. But safety is an illusion. It's just the silence before the next storm. It was late, past midnight, when I heard it. Pausa. Som de vento e neve battendo na janela. 3 slow knocks. At first, I thought it was the wind, or maybe the old wooden panels shifting with the cold. But then, it came again. 3 deliberate knocks. One after another. Firm. Patient. Human. My book slid from my hands. I remember the way my heart stopped, just for a second, before it started racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. No one ever came here. Not once. The road that led to this cabin wasn't even on most maps. I turned off the lantern. The only light left was the orange flicker of the fire. Slowly, I crept toward the window. Outside, all I could see was snow, thick, swirling, endless white. And then, a shadow moved. Someone was standing under the porch light. Tall, still, unmoving. I couldn't make out his face, just the outline of a man, coatless in the freezing cold. Snowflakes gathered on his shoulders, but he didn't shiver. He just stood there. And then I heard it, his voice. Deep. Come. Too calm. Open the door, Elena. Every bone in my body froze. No one here knew my name. I hadn't used it since I left the city. Not once. How did he know? My first instinct was to run, through the back into the woods, but my legs refused to move. My breath fogged the window as I pressed closer, trying to see his face. And then, for just a second, the wind shifted. The porch light flickered, and his features came into focus. Dark hair. Sharp jawline. Eyes like storm clouds. A face I'd seen before. In photographs. In newspaper articles. In nightmares. Luca Moretti. The Mafia boss whose name I had tried to erase from my memory. The man whose secrets had destroyed everything I once knew. He was standing at my door, in the middle of a snowstorm, saying my name. My hands were shaking. I could barely breathe. I didn't even realize I had reached for the small pistol hidden under the bookshelf. I kept it pointed at the door, whispering to myself. He's not real. He can't be here. He can't have found me. But then came the third knock. Louder this time. Impatient. Elena. Open the door. There was something in his tone, not anger, not threat, but something else. Something like desperation. The silence between us stretched until I thought my chest would explode. Snow kept falling, muting every sound, wrapping the world in white. And still, he waited. Finally, I took one slow step toward the door. Then another. My fingers trembled as I reached for the handle. I turned it, just slightly, and the cold rushed in like a ghost. The door creaked open. And there he was. He looked nothing like I remembered. His suit was soaked through with snow, his hair disheveled, his face pale and tired. But his eyes, they were the same. Dark, steady, unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't force his way in. He just looked at me, as if seeing something he hadn't believed was real. You're hard to find, he said quietly. I tried to speak, but no words came out. The pistol was still in my hand, but it felt useless now. He took a slow step forward, stopping just short of the threshold. You can point that at me all night, Elena, he said, voice low. But if I meant to hurt you, I would have done it long before you saw me. I could hear the snow crackling beneath his shoes, the faint hum of his breath in the cold. He looked over my shoulder, toward the fire burning inside, then back at me. "Let me in," he said softly. "Just for a minute. I'm not here to kill you." Every instinct screamed no. But my heart, for reasons I still can't explain, said yes. So I stepped aside. And the most dangerous man I'd ever known crossed my doorstep. "Pausa, som de porta esse facendo, o vento diminuindo, o fogo estelando com força." As the door shut behind him, I realized something terrible. This cabin, my refuge, wasn't safe anymore. It had just become my prison. And the man who had found me was the one person I swore I'd never see again. Clapperboard capitulo 2. The man who shouldn't be here. Som suave de vento se dissipando. O estilo continuo de l'errera. Passos lentos sobre o asoljo de Madeira. He stood there, dripping snow onto my floor. Tall, quiet, dangerous in every movement. Luca Moretti. The name I had run from for 2 years. The name that haunted my dreams. And now, he was standing in my living room. He didn't look like a man who belonged to this world. Not here, not in the silence I had built. His presence felt too heavy, too deliberate. Like the world itself had bent to bring him here. He took off his gloves, slow and precise, and placed them on the table beside him. His eyes wandered around the cabin, the shelves stacked with canned food, the chipped teacup by the fireplace, the notebook on the chair where I'd been sitting moments before. He saw everything. He missed nothing. "You've been living like this?" he asked quietly. "Off the grid. Alone." His tone wasn't mocking. It was almost curious. "I had no choice," I said. My voice came out smaller than I expected. "I didn't want to be found." He nodded slightly, as if he'd expected that answer. Then he walked closer to the fire, extending his hands toward the warmth. The light flickered across his face, revealing faint scars I'd never seen before. He looked older. Not by years, by weight. By something carried too long. I kept the pistol close, though my hands trembled. "Why are you here?" I asked. "You don't just show up after all this time. Not unless." He cut me off with a look. Sharp. Final. "Because someone else is looking for you," he said. "Someone who doesn't knock before they shoot." My breath caught in my throat. I didn't understand. I thought I'd erased every trace of my existence. Burned documents, fake names, no bank accounts, no trail. But apparently, ghosts leave shadows. He turned to face me fully now. "You stole something," he said. "Something that didn't belong to you." I frowned. "You mean the truth? The documents that proved who you really were?" For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed his face. Not anger, but something darker. "Regret. Truth doesn't belong to anyone," he said. "But lies. They're expensive." He took a step closer. I could smell the faint trace of whiskey on his breath, the cold still clinging to his clothes. "You don't understand what you have, Elena. That drive, it's not just about me. It's about everyone who touched that network. Politicians. Investors. Families. You think they'd let you hide forever?" My stomach twisted. He wasn't wrong. I'd kept the flash drive hidden under the floorboards, pretending it didn't exist. Pretending ignorance could keep me safe. But hearing him say it out loud made it real again. I took a slow breath. "So what now? You kill me and take it?" He tilted his head slightly, almost amused. "If that's what I wanted, you'd already be dead." He walked to the table, brushing dust from a wooden chair, and sat down as if he owned the place. "Sit. Elena. Please." The word please from a man like him felt heavier than a threat. I hesitated, then sat across from him, the pistol still between us like a fragile truce. For a moment, we just listened to the fire. No words. Just the crackle of wood and the wind pressing against the glass. "Do you know what it's like," he began softly, "to have your entire world built on secrets, and then watch someone tear it apart without even knowing why?" I stared at him. "You're asking me to feel sorry for you?" "No," he leaned back. "I'm asking you to understand why I came." He looked away, eyes distant. Somewhere beyond the snow, beyond the years. "That file. It isn't what you think. It's not just about money, or crime, or control. There are things in there that don't belong to anyone. Not even me." He paused, then looked directly at me again. You could burn it, and it wouldn't matter. They'd still come for you. Because they think you know something. Even if you don't. I felt the air leave my lungs. It wasn't just him I had to fear. It was them, the faceless names behind every deal, every signature I had ever translated. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't my enemy anymore. He was the only one who truly understood the danger I was in. I lowered the gun. Just a little. He noticed. You don't trust me, he said. I don't blame you. But right now, I'm the only one standing between you and the people who want you gone. His voice dropped lower, almost like a confession. You did what was right. But doing what's right doesn't mean you get to survive it. For a long time I said nothing. I just watched the flames dance in the fireplace, their light flickering over the lines of his face. He looked tired. Not like a man on a mission, like a man who had lost too much. Finally I whispered, You shouldn't have come here. He gave a faint, weary smile. You think I wanted to? You think I wanted to see what you became? That stung because there was truth in it. Then why? I asked again. Why risk it? He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of look that strips you bare, makes you feel seen in ways you don't want to be. Because, he said quietly, you're not the only one who can't sleep at night. And then, silence. The kind that hums in your bones. The kind that means the story isn't over. But something inside you just shifted forever. I remember watching him close his eyes for a brief second, like a man surrendering to exhaustion. And in that instant, I saw it. Not the Mafia boss, not the legend. Just a man. Broken. Haunted. Dangerous in all the wrong ways. The snow outside began to fall harder, covering the world in white again. Inside, two people sat by the fire. One running from the truth, and one carrying it like a curse. And neither of us knew it yet. But by morning, nothing in that cabin would ever be the same. Clapperboard Capitulo 3. A deal in the dark. Som suave du vento batendo nas janelas. O fogo de l'herrera crepita. O ambiente es silencioso mas pesado. That night, after Luca walked into my cabin, the world stopped feeling like mine. Everything, the walls, the floorboards, even the firelight, seemed to shift around his presence. He didn't belong there. And yet, somehow he filled the room. I sat in silence for what felt like hours. The snowstorm outside was growing stronger. The wind howled through the cracks, rattling the old windows. But inside, the quiet between us was louder than the storm. He didn't speak at first. He just sat there, watching the fire, like a man trying to remember what warmth felt like. You know, he said finally, for a woman who's been running from death, you built yourself a very cozy prison. I didn't answer. I was tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of pretending I wasn't. So I just said what I was thinking. Why didn't you just let me disappear, Luca? Why come all the way here? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the flames. Because you don't disappear from men like the ones you crossed. Not even I could. He poured himself a small drink from the bottle I kept for emergencies, the same one I'd never opened. The glass trembled slightly in his hand, and I realized, he was just as cold as I was. You have something, he said. Something that can burn the world down if it ends up in the wrong hands. I swallowed hard. The flash drive. I'd almost forgotten it existed. Almost. It was buried under the floorboards, wrapped in a torn piece of cloth, sealed in a tin box. But now, it felt like a weight pressing against my chest again. It's not mine, I said quietly. I never wanted it. He gave a short, bitter laugh. Neither did I. He stood, pacing slowly, like a caged animal. The firelight flickered over his face, shadows carving sharp lines over his jaw. That drive doesn't just have my secrets, Elena. It has theirs, the people who funded us, the ones who used us. You think they'll stop looking for you? You think they'll just forget? His voice grew softer. No. They'll keep digging. Until they find you. I watched him carefully. His tone wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And that terrified me even more. So what do you want from me? I asked. He turned toward me, eyes dark but steady. A deal. That word, deal, hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to laugh at the irony. A mafia boss offering a deal to the woman who exposed him. But I didn't. I waited. You give me the drive, he said, and I make sure no one ever touches you again. Not them. Not my people. Not anyone. I stared at him, searching for a crack in his expression, a sign of deceit. But all I saw was exhaustion. The kind that comes from living too long in a world built on blood. And if I say no? I asked. He shrugged slightly. Then someone else finds you first. And when they do, you won't have the luxury of saying anything at all. I wanted to hate him for being so calm, for speaking like he was reading my fate off a page already written. But deep down, I knew he was right. Still, something in me refused to give in. I don't trust you, I said. He met my eyes, unflinching. Good. You shouldn't. Trust gets people killed. He took another sip from the glass, his gaze never leaving mine. But survival, that's different. Survival is about choosing the lesser devil. His words echoed in my head long after he stopped speaking. I wanted to believe there was still a version of this where I could walk away clean. But there wasn't. Not anymore. We sat there in silence, the fire between us like a line we both couldn't cross. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Then he spoke again. Quieter now. You know, I used to have a cabin too, he said. In Sicily. My father built it by the coast. There was an olive tree in front of it. I used to think it'd live forever. He smiled faintly, but it wasn't joy. It was memory. The day my father died, I went back there. The tree was gone. Storm took it. Roots and all. He looked at me then, and for the first time I saw the man beneath the legend. A man who had lost everything he thought was unbreakable. I whispered, almost without thinking. Why are you telling me this? He took a long breath. Because you remind me of that tree. You keep standing where the world keeps trying to bury you. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air was thick with something unspoken, something that shouldn't have been there between us. Then he stood, placed the glass down, and turned toward the window. Outside, the storm was relentless, the snow dancing like ghosts in the dark. You don't have to decide tonight, he said softly. But when you do, decide fast. The world doesn't wait for anyone. He moved toward the guest room, the one I hadn't opened in months, and paused at the door. Lock your doors, Elena. Even from me. And with that, he disappeared into the shadows. Som deporta esi facendo lentamente. Longo silenzio. O vento la fora esi a calma. I sat there for hours, staring at the dying fire, the glass he left half full, the marks of his boots melting into the floorboards. I told myself I wouldn't sleep. That I'd stay awake and plan, and think, and find a way out. But exhaustion won. And somewhere between fear and disbelief, I closed my eyes. That night, for the first time since I'd run away, I dreamed of the city again. Of the faces I'd left behind. And of a man in the shadows watching me, not as a threat, but as something else entirely. Clapperboard Capitulo 4. The cabin becomes a cage. When I woke up the next morning, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The storm had passed. But the air inside the cabin felt different. He was still here. I could feel his presence before I even saw him. That strange heavy energy that filled every space he entered. When I stepped into the living room, he was there, standing by the window, watching the woods. Snow covered everything outside, turning the world into a sheet of white. He stood so still it was as if he was carved from it. You don't sleep much, I said quietly. He didn't turn. Sleep's a luxury. One I can't afford. I wanted to ask what that meant. But I didn't. Because deep down I already knew. He was a man who had learned to live on alert, always listening for footsteps, for the sound of danger before it arrived. And now that danger had brought him here. To me. I started making coffee. Mostly because I needed to do something. The silence between us felt too loud, like the walls were listening. When I poured his cup, he finally turned around. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second when he took it. Thank you, he said. It was strange. Hearing that word from him. From the man whose name once echoed in headlines and police reports. From the man whose signature had once meant life or death for others. Now he was standing barefoot in my kitchen, drinking coffee like an ordinary human being. It almost didn't make sense. We didn't talk much that day. He stayed near the fire, reading one of the old books that had been here before I moved in. Hemingway, I think. And I kept myself busy, pretending not to watch him. But I did. Every movement. Every pause. The way he ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking. The way his shoulders relaxed when he forgot to be guarded. It terrified me. How human he seemed. Because it's harder to hate someone when they stop being a monster. Later that afternoon, he went outside to chop wood. I told him he didn't have to, but he just smirked. You really think I'd let you freeze to death while I'm here? He said it so simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And maybe for him it was. Watching him through the window, I realized how surreal everything had become. 2 years of hiding, running from his name, his shadow. And now, he was right there under the same roof, splitting wood for my fireplace. And I didn't know whether to scream or thank him. When he came back in, his hands were red from the cold. I handed him a towel, and he paused, looking at me with that unreadable expression. There was something behind those eyes. Something heavy, unspoken. You don't have to be afraid every time I move, he said. I'm not, I lied. He smiled, the kind of smile that said he could read every lie I told. You're terrible at hiding fear, Elena. It's in your hands. Always has been. I wanted to say something sharp in return, something to remind him that I wasn't helpless. But before I could, he added, that's not a weakness. It's what kept you alive. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He had turned my fear, the thing that had defined me, into something else. Something powerful. That night, as darkness fell again, we found ourselves back by the fire. 2 strangers trapped by circumstance, sharing a quiet that said more than words could. He stared into the flames for a long time before saying, You're thinking about running. I always am, I admitted. Then don't do it tonight, he said softly. The roads are frozen. And I don't chase people in the cold. That line, I didn't know whether it was a warning or a kindness. Maybe both. I asked him what he planned to do with the drive once he got it. He didn't look at me when he answered. Destroy it, he said. Everything on it. Everything that made me who I was. And then what? Then maybe I get to stop being him. There was something almost fragile in the way he said that. Like he was speaking about a ghost he couldn't exorcise. For a long time, we just listened to the wind against the walls. I wondered what it must feel like, to carry the weight of an empire built on fear. To wake up every day knowing your own power was also your curse. You could leave, I said finally. You could disappear like I did. He chuckled. Not bitterly, but sadly. Men like me don't disappear. We just stop being found. His words lingered in the air long after they left his mouth. When I went to my room that night, I locked the door. Not because I feared him, but because I didn't trust what I was starting to feel. That faint, dangerous empathy. That flicker of curiosity. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The snow had stopped. The world outside was still and gray. And there he was again, already awake, sitting by the fire, his back to me. I watched him for a moment. The stillness, the quiet strength. And for the first time in 2 years, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. But that realization didn't bring comfort. It brought fear. Because when you stop being alone, you start having something to lose again. Capitulo 5. The Night of the Fire. That night, the air felt wrong. Even before anything happened, I could feel it. Like the world outside had stopped breathing. The fire was low, casting long shadows across the cabin walls, and he was sitting in the same chair by the window. His shoulders tense, his eyes alert. He hadn't spoken much all day. Neither had I. But silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, purposeful. Like we were both waiting for something we couldn't name. Then he stood up suddenly. Turn off the light, he said. His voice was calm, but I heard it, the edge beneath the calm. I didn't question him. I just did it. The cabin went dark except for the dying glow of the fire. He moved to the window and looked out, every muscle in his body tight as steel. Someone's here, he murmured. My heart stopped. The words fell into the air like ice. Are you sure? I whispered. I don't guess, he replied. I wanted to look too, but he lifted his hand. A warning. His other hand reached behind his jacket, pulling out a small gun I hadn't even known he had. For a moment, I thought, of course he has one. A man like him never stops being ready. Go to the bedroom, he whispered. Lock the door and stay quiet. I shook my head before I could think. No, I'm not. Elena. Just my name, spoken low, with a weight that made me freeze. Do it. Something in his tone told me this wasn't about control. It was about protection. And fear, not for himself but for me. I ran to the bedroom, shut the door, and pressed my ear against it. The only sound was the wind. And then, a crunch. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Outside. Then, glass shattering. My hands started shaking. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even breathe. Som abafado de pasos, depois o estilo de tiro. Grito abafado lá fora. He moved fast. I could hear it, the precision in his steps, the sharp commands under his breath. Then silence again. For almost a full minute. Then, his voice, low, urgent. Elena, stay where you are. But I didn't. Something in me, maybe fear, maybe instinct, pushed me to move. When I opened the door, the living room was filled with smoke. Not from gunfire, from fire. The curtains were burning. The wood crackling. Someone had thrown something through the window. A Molotov, maybe. The smell of gasoline was sharp and suffocating. He turned when he saw me, eyes wide. I told you to stay in the room. The fire. I coughed. It's spreading. He grabbed the blanket from the couch, smothered the flames nearest to us and shouted, We need to get out now. But the front door, it was blocked. Flames licking up the walls. The heat was unbearable. He looked around fast, assessing. Then his gaze fixed on the back window. There, he said. He smashed it with the back of his gun, shards of glass scattering across the floor. Then he turned to me, grabbed my hand, and for the first time I felt it clearly. His hand was shaking. Go, he ordered. Don't look back. We crawled through the window, the cold air outside slicing into my lungs. The snow was knee-deep, the forest black except for the orange glow of the flames behind us. When we finally stopped running, the cabin was a tower of fire in the distance. Everything I had built, everything I had hidden from the world, turning to ash. I collapsed into the snow, gasping, staring at the flames. It's gone, I whispered. Everything. He stood beside me, silent. The firelight painted his face in red and gold, his eyes reflecting something between fury and guilt. They found me, he said softly. Not you. Me. But they came here. Because of what I am, he cut in. Because of what I was trying to stop. He looked down at me, his breath heavy, his jaw tight. You should hate me, Elena. You should have left me there. And if I did? I shot back. Would I still be alive? He stared at me for a long moment. Then slowly something in his face changed. Not softer. Not gentler. Just real. No, he said quietly. You wouldn't. Som do fogo crepitando ao lunge. Vento forte verendo o bosque. We stayed in the forest until the flames began to die. Neither of us spoke for a long time. The cold bit at my skin, but I couldn't move. Because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was afraid for him. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was low, raw, stripped of all the armor he usually wore. There's a place not far from here. A safe one. We move before sunrise. I nodded, though every part of me ached. And then what? He looked at me, the firelight fading in his eyes. Then we find out who set that fire, and why they want you dead as much as they want me. That last part made my blood run cold. Me. I whispered. They came for you. No, he said firmly. You were never just a bystander in this, Elena. You just didn't know it yet. Capítulo 6. Ashes and Secrets. Som initial. O vento frio cortando as arvores, passos passados na neve. O fogo de antiga cabana agora é apenas fumaça distante. Uma respiração apressada, misturada como som de neve se partindo sob os pés. We walked for what felt like hours. The night was dark. Too dark, and every step echoed through the frozen forest. He led the way, silent. His figure just a dark shape moving ahead of me. I followed, my breath fogging the air, my mind spinning. The smell of smoke still clung to my clothes. My cabin, my home, was gone. Everything I had built to escape my past turned to ash in a single night. And the worst part was, I wasn't even sure what I was running from anymore. When we finally stopped, it was near an abandoned ranger's hut. Small, hidden under snow and vines. He pushed the door open and motioned for me to enter first. Inside it was cold but dry. He started a small fire in the stone pit with practiced ease, the flames catching quickly. When the light filled the room, I saw his face clearly for the first time since the fire. Smoke-streaked, exhausted, but alive. For a while, neither of us said a word. Then, finally, I broke the silence. You said they wanted me dead too. Why? He didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire, jaw tight, eyes lost in the flickering light. Because you saw something you shouldn't have, he said at last. Years ago. My stomach turned. That's impossible. I didn't even know who you were until. You did, he said quietly. You just didn't know what you saw. He reached into his coat and pulled out something small, metallic. A locket. Old, dented, and familiar. My breath caught in my throat. That's mine, I whispered. Where did you? It was found in one of the vaults I burned, he interrupted. 2 years ago. The night I vanished. I felt dizzy. The room started spinning. I lost that when I was a kid, I said, my voice trembling. Before my parents died. He nodded slowly. Your father. Elena. He wasn't who you think he was. Som de lenha estelando, silencio tenso después de revelação. Don't, I said, shaking my head. Don't do this. He worked for my organization, he continued anyway, his tone flat, controlled. He handled offshore records, coded names, financial transfers. He was one of the few who could decode the ledgers. I stepped back, my pulse pounding. No. That can't be true. He tried to leave, he said. To protect you and your mother. But when someone tries to leave, they're marked. The firelight flickered across his face, and I saw something in his eyes. Regret. Not guilt, but grief. The explosion that killed them, he said slowly, wasn't an accident. My legs nearly gave out. For years, I had believed it was fate. A random tragedy. A gas leak. A moment of bad luck. But now, I sank to the floor, shaking my head. No, I can't. You were supposed to die too, he said quietly. But you didn't. Someone got you out. I looked up sharply. Who? He looked away. I don't know. Don't lie to me, I snapped. You always know everything. He met my eyes, and for the first time since I met him, I saw fear there. Real fear. It wasn't me, he said. But whoever it was, they knew who you'd become. They made sure you'd disappear. Som do vento batendo nas janelas do abrigo. Silencio prolongado. I sat there, staring at the fire, my mind replaying every fragment of memory I thought I understood. My father's sudden trips. The envelopes he never let me touch. The men who visited late at night, speaking in whispers. I had buried it all. Because remembering hurt too much. Now the pieces finally fit, and I wished they didn't. So all this time, I murmured, I was never hiding from you. I was hiding from them. He nodded. And now they've found you. Because of me. He stood, pacing the small space, running a hand through his hair. They think you have something. A key, maybe. Something your father hid. A key to what? To ending them, he said. To destroying everything that's left of the family. His voice hardened when he said, family, like the word itself was poison. I tried to do it, he continued. I thought if I burned it all, the money, the names, the records, I could make it end. But someone survived. Someone who wants it rebuilt. He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. And they think you have the last piece. Som do fogo diminuindo. O vento la fora mais forte. The realization hit me like ice. My whole life, the fear, the hiding, the loneliness, it wasn't random. It was by design. So I'm just a target, I whispered. A pawn in your war. No, he said sharply. You're the reason I stopped fighting it. His voice cracked slightly, almost imperceptibly. But I heard it. When I found out you were still alive, he said, I thought maybe there was still a chance to make it right. By dragging me back into it? I shot back. By burning my home down? They burned it, he said through clenched teeth. Not me. They wanted to send a message. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You can hate me for what I've done, Elena. But don't mistake me for them. I'm the only reason you're still breathing. Som du vento diminuendo. O fogo si apaga lentamente. For a long moment, I just stared at him. The man I had feared. The man who had ruined my peace. And yet, the man who had just saved my life. Everything felt tangled. Truth, lies, loyalty, guilt, a web I couldn't escape. I whispered, barely audible. Then what do we do now? He looked at me, eyes dark but steady. We go back, he said. We find what your father left behind. Before they do. Back where? He hesitated. To the city. The word made my stomach twist. I hadn't been back since that night. The night everything burned. If we go back, I said quietly, there's no hiding anymore. There's no hiding anyway, he replied. Not anymore. He walked to the door, opened it slightly, the cold wind rushing in. Rest while you can, he said. When the sun rises, we start. And then he stepped outside, disappearing into the dark snow. I stayed there, staring at the dying fire, my thoughts racing. My father. The locket. The fire. The man who saved me and destroyed me at the same time. Nothing about my life was what I thought it was. And somewhere deep down, I realized something that terrified me more than all of it. I didn't just trust him now. I needed him. Capítulo 7. Return to the city. Som initial. O rugido distante motor. No sobre o asfalto malhado. Treveo abafado. O som de chuva batendo contra o vidro do carro. We left before sunrise. The forest was still wrapped in fog, the ashes of the cabin barely visible behind us. He didn't say much. Neither did I. The silence between us had changed again. It wasn't fear anymore. It was inevitability. We were heading toward the city. The place I swore I would never return to. The place where everything began and ended. I watched the trees blur past the window, the horizon dark and endless. I thought I'd feel relief, maybe closure. But all I felt was a knot in my chest, tightening with every mile. You don't have to come with me, I said quietly. You could drop me off somewhere. I'll manage. He kept his eyes on the road, his jaw set. You wouldn't last a day without me, he said flatly. Then after a pause. And I wouldn't last a day without you. That last part came out almost involuntarily. He didn't look at me when he said it, like he was afraid to admit it had been true. Som de chuva aumentando. O caro passando por uma ponte. Ecos distance de cidade surgindo. Buzinas, sirens, trem ao lunge. By the time we reached the outskirts, the skyline appeared through the mist. Tall, cold, unforgiving. The city hadn't changed. It still had that same heartbeat of chaos and secrets, pulsing beneath the noise. And somewhere in it, buried deep, were the answers. He parked in an underground garage beneath a crumbling warehouse. Safe house, he said simply. Used to be one of ours. No one comes here anymore. The elevator was old, the kind that rattled with every movement. When we reached the third floor, the doors opened to a dark corridor. Dust, peeling paint, silence. Inside one of the rooms, there was a table, some old maps, a rusted metal box. He walked straight to it, unlocked it with a small key from his pocket, and pulled out a folder. He placed it in front of me. Your father's records, he said. What's left of them? I hesitated, staring at the folder. It looked ordinary, worn, water-stained, the edges torn. But I knew the weight it carried. When I finally opened it, the smell of old paper and smoke filled the air. Inside were names, bank accounts, coded notes, and one photograph. My heart nearly stopped when I saw it. It was a picture of my father. smiling, standing beside him. "This was taken a month before he died," he said quietly. "Before everything went wrong." I couldn't stop staring at the photo. My father looked proud, almost happy. And beside him, the man I had once called a monster looked younger, calmer, human. "You knew him," I whispered. "Really knew him?" "He was the only honest man in a dishonest world," he replied. "He wanted out. He thought I could help him." "But you couldn't," I said, bitterness slipping into my voice. "He didn't defend himself." "I was too late," he said simply. "Som de trovos ao lunge. O fogo do aquecider antigo estelando." I turned the page in the folder. And then I saw something that made my breath hitch. A letter, addressed to me. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting unmistakably my father's. "If you're reading this, Elena, then the truth has found you. There are things I couldn't protect you from. But I tried. Inside the locket, you'll find the key, not to wealth, but to truth. Burn this letter after reading. Trust no one who comes to you in my name. Not even him." My hands trembled. I looked up at the man in front of me, the one the letter warned me about. He watched me carefully, his expression unreadable. "He didn't mean me," he said. "Didn't he?" I whispered. "Som do vento atravessando frestas de janela. Silencio espesso si instala." He turned away, running a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. "I could have lied to you," he said finally. "I could have told you your father was innocent, that he had nothing to do with any of it. But he did. And I did. We all did. Then why help me now?" He looked at me, and this time there was no mask. "Because he saved my life once. And I never got to return the favor." I didn't know what to say. Every truth felt like another wound. I reached for the locket hanging from my neck, the one he'd found in the vault. I turned it over in my hand, feeling its weight. There, etched faintly into the metal, was something I hadn't noticed before, a symbol. A small, intricate crest. The same one that appeared on the last page of the folder. "That's it," he said quietly. "That's what they're after." "But what does it open?" "Something buried deep. Not money. Information. Records. The kind that could erase the family for good." My chest tightened. All these years, I'd carried it around my neck, the thing everyone was killing for. "So what now?" I asked. "Now," he said, reaching for his gun and checking the chamber, "we finish what your father started. Som de motor legando. O som de chuva voltando. O eco de sirens ao lunge." As we drove deeper into the city, everything felt heavier. Every street corner carried a ghost. Every light reflected a memory I didn't want to face. He turned to me once, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Once we open what's hidden, there's no going back. They'll come for us both." "They already are," I said. He gave a faint, almost broken smile. "Then maybe it's time they learned we're not running anymore." Capítulo 8. The Vault Beneath the City. The city never slept. Even underground, I could feel its pulse, the vibrations of life, chaos, power, all moving above us like an endless storm. We were ghosts walking beneath it. He led the way through the tunnels, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The air smelled of rust, oil, and something ancient. I followed close behind, clutching the locket in my hand. "Are you sure this is it?" I asked quietly. "It's where your father's coordinates led," he replied. "And he never made mistakes." His voice echoed off the walls low and steady, though I could tell he was tense. He wasn't just cautious. He was ready. For what? I didn't know yet. We reached a metal door at the end of the tunnel. Huge, rusted, with no visible lock. Only a small circular slot in the center. He turned to me. "The locket," he said. My hands trembled as I unclasped it from my neck and handed it over. He studied it for a moment, then pressed the edge of it into the slot. It clicked, and suddenly, the entire wall groaned and shifted. The sound was deafening. Metal grinding against stone, dust falling from the ceiling. The vault door opened inward, revealing a small chamber bathed in dim blue light. Inside, there was a single desk. On it, a metal case. And beside it, an old photograph, of my father, my mother, and me. I hadn't been more than 6. For a moment, my legs refused to move. It was like stepping into a memory that had been buried alive. He walked in first, sweeping the room with his gun drawn. Then he gave a small nod. Clear. I stepped inside. Every breath I took felt heavy, as if the air itself carried the ghosts of the past. Som de pasos lentos. Som metallico ao abrir maleta. He opened the case. Inside were documents, flash drives, and one small black notebook with my father's handwriting. He flipped it open, scanning a few pages. His eyes widened slightly. This, he whispered. This isn't just evidence. It's everything. Everything. I asked. Names. Accounts. Routes. The entire structure of the organization. Everyone who paid, everyone who killed, everyone who lied. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. Your father didn't just leave this behind to destroy them, he said. He left it for you, to finish what he started. I shook my head. No. I can't. I'm not. You are, he said firmly. You're the only one who can. They'd never see you coming. The idea terrified me. Me, the woman who ran from everything, who hid in the woods, who thought safety was silence. Now being told I was the last piece of a war I didn't want to fight. Why didn't he trust you to finish it? I asked quietly. Because he knew I couldn't, he replied. I was part of the problem. You weren't. Som de algo esse movendo no túnel lá fora. Estelo. Silencio. He froze. So did I. Then, from the darkness beyond the door, voices. Low, distant but getting closer. Men. They found us, he muttered. He grabbed the notebook and stuffed it into his jacket. We have to move. Before we could, a gunshot exploded through the corridor. The sound tore through the chamber. One bullet, then another. Dust rained from the ceiling as he pulled me behind the desk. Stay down, he barked. My ears rang, my pulse roaring in my head. I could hear footsteps. Heavy, fast, confident. Whoever they weren't afraid. He fired back. 2 sharp shots, then silence. He looked at me, breathing hard. There's another way out, he said. Through the maintenance tunnel. But we'll have to move fast. How do you know? I asked. Because I built this place. I stared at him, shocked. You built it. Back when I thought power was safety, he said bitterly. Before I learned it was a curse. Another explosion echoed, this time closer. The vault door trembled. We didn't have much time. He grabbed my hand and pulled me toward a small grate in the floor. He kicked it open, revealing a narrow passage descending into darkness. Go, he said. I'll cover you. I'm not leaving you. I snapped. Elena, this isn't up for debate. Neither is my choice, I interrupted. For a second we locked eyes, both of us covered in dust and fear and something unspoken. Then slowly he nodded. We jumped down together. Som de metal rangendo. Gatas de agua. Pasos apresados y coando. The tunnel below was tighter, colder, and darker. Our flashlight flickered with every step. Above us, the sound of chaos, shouts, gunfire, footsteps, echoing down like thunder. He led the way, breathing hard, clutching the case with one hand and his weapon with the other. If they catch us, I said between breaths, what happens? They won't, he said. And if they do? He looked over his shoulder, eyes glinting in the darkness. Then you run. I wanted to tell him I was tired of running. But I didn't. Because deep down I knew, if it came to that I would run. And I would hate myself for it. We reached another hatch, this one leading up. He climbed first, pushed it open, and climbed out into what looked like an abandoned subway station. Graffiti covered the walls, water dripped from the ceiling, and the faint sound of trains echoed somewhere far above. I climbed out after him, gasping for air. He shut the hatch and leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Then, suddenly, laughter. Low mocking from the shadows. We both froze. A figure stepped out, tall, dressed in black, a gun loosely hanging from his hand. His voice was smooth, sharp as glass. You really thought you could bury it forever, didn't you? I didn't recognize him, but he did. The color drained from his face. "Marco," he said quietly. "You should have stayed dead," the man sneered. "Would have made things cleaner." "You burned the cabin," he said. "Had to send a message," Marco replied. "Didn't realize she'd survive the fire too. Lucky girl." He raised his gun slightly. "Hand over the case, brother. Let's end this." "Brother." The word hit me like a punch. "You're his?" "Half," he said, his voice low. "Different mother. Same blood. Same curse." Marco smirked. "You always did think you could play hero. But you forgot one thing. Heroes die first." He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the station. Everything went white. "Som abafado. Respiraceo accelerada. Corpo cando." When my vision cleared, he was on the ground. Blood. Too much blood. I screamed his name, crawling to him, my hands trembling. "Stay with me, please." He coughed, his hand finding mine. "Run," he whispered. "Take it. Finish it." But I couldn't move. I couldn't leave him. Marco stepped closer, reloading his weapon. "She won't get far," he said. "Just like your father didn't." That word, father, broke something inside me. Before I could think, I grabbed his gun. One shot. Then another. The echoes died slowly. Marco fell. The silence that followed was deafening. Som de respiraceo tremula. Trem distant passando. Goteras no tetto. I knelt beside him, the man who had ruined and saved my life, holding his head in my lap. His eyes fluttered open, faintly. "You did it," he murmured. "No," I said, tears blurring my vision. "We did. Your father, he'd be proud." I shook my head. "Don't you dare leave me now." He smiled weakly. "I wasn't made for peace, Elena. But maybe you are." His hand slipped from mine. And then, silence. I don't remember how long I sat there. The station was cold, the air heavy with smoke and grief. But somewhere beneath it all, I heard it, the faint steady hum of life continuing above. The city, still breathing. Still alive. And I realized then, this was what survival looked like. Not safety. Not peace. But choosing to move, even when everything inside you wants to stop. I took the case. The notebook. The locket. And I walked away. Fade out. Som du trem passando lentamente. Piano suave comica a tocar. Vosta narradora off. Calma e dolorida. They say the truth will set you free. But sometimes, the truth just burns everything you thought you were, until only what's real is left. He died to protect it. My father died to hide it. Now, I live to finish it. Capitulo 9. The truth that remains. Som initial. Chuva suave batendo janelas de vidro. Voz de radio distant. O som de ventilator girando lentamente. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It felt as if the sky itself was mourning him. Mourning all the things that had burned, all the people who never came back. I sat by the window of a cheap motel on the edge of the city, staring at the endless gray horizon. The case lay open on the bed behind me. Papers, flash drives, notebooks. Pieces of a puzzle that could destroy everything or, maybe, save something. It had been a week since that night in the tunnels. A week since his last breath. I still heard it sometimes when the room went too quiet. Like an echo that refused to fade. Som de papel sendo manecido. Teclado de computador sendo digitado. I had spent every hour since then trying to decode what my father left behind. He had hidden the truth in layers. Codes within codes. Names within initials. I found entire companies that didn't exist, accounts filled with money stolen from people who'd never know. And every page I turned revealed something darker, something that made me realize why my father died. And why he did too. They were part of something vast, something that reached into every corner of the city. Politics, law enforcement, corporations. A web spun from greed and fear. And now, somehow, all of it was in my hands. "You wanted me to finish it, Dad," I whispered. "But you never told me how." Som de bat ida leave na porta. Silencio. Depoi, outra bat ida. My breath caught. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't told anyone where I was. I reached for the gun he'd left me. Heavy, cold, familiar now. "Who is it?" I called out. No answer. Just another knock. I moved quietly to the peephole. Heart pounding. A woman stood outside. Tall, dark coat, umbrella in hand. Her expression unreadable. "Elena Russo?" she said softly without looking directly at the door. "My name's Sarah. I worked with your father." The sound of his name on her lips made my stomach twist. "Prove it," I said. She slipped an envelope under the door. Inside was a photograph. My father and her, standing beside an old car, smiling. Same eyes. Same city skyline behind them. I opened the door slowly. Som de porta rangendo. Passos entrando. Achava intensifica la fora. She looked tired, like someone who'd seen too much and said too little. Her coat was soaked, but she didn't seem to care. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on the open case. "So you found it," she said. "He left it for me." "I know. I helped him build it." I blinked. "You what?" "Your father knew he couldn't trust anyone inside the organization. So he came to me. I was a journalist then. We hid everything beneath the tunnels. But he ran out of time." She paused, her voice softening. "He always said if anything happened to him, you'd find your way there. He believed in you." I didn't know whether to feel proud or angry. "He believed in a daughter he barely knew," I said bitterly. "Maybe," she said. "But he also believed in what was right. That's why he died." Som de cadera sendo paxada. Ella se senta. Chava continua. "The men behind this, they still run things," she said quietly. "If we publish what's in that case, it'll shake every foundation in the city. But it'll also put a target on your back, bigger than before." "So what do I do? Hide again?" "No. You expose them. But not all at once." She leaned forward. "You feed the truth slowly, piece by piece. So they can't silence it fast enough." Her words lingered. "Feed the truth slowly. Let it bleed into the system." That night, I made a choice. No more running. No more hiding. No more silence. Som de teclado digitando rapidamente. Ruido de servidores. Vos of suave e firme de narradora. I built a network. Anonymous. Hidden. Every night, I released a new fragment. Names, locations, wire transfers. Each piece enough to light a fire but not enough to trace back to me. The world began to notice. News stations whispered of corruption. People started asking questions. Fear began to shift. It was no longer mine. It was theirs. For the first time in years, I slept without looking over my shoulder. But peace is never permanent. Som de notificaco de mensagem. Passos apressados. One evening, as I was preparing another file to release, a message appeared on my screen. No sender. Just a single sentence. "You think you've won, but you don't know the whole story." Then another. "He's not dead." My heart stopped. The room blurred. What do you mean?" I whispered to the empty air. Another message. "Come to the docks. Midnight. Alone." I stared at the screen, shaking. It had to be a trap. It had to be. But still, some part of me couldn't ignore it. Because if there was even the smallest chance, the smallest flicker of hope that he was alive, I had to know. Som de vento cortando oar barcos batendo nas docas. Correntes rangendo. The docks were deserted that night. Fog rolled across the water like breath. I stood there, gun hidden beneath my jacket, waiting. Minutes passed. Then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Familiar. Elena. The voice. That voice. I turned. And there he was. Alive. Som de respiraceo tremula. Corazo acelerado. Voz emocionada. He looked different. Thinner, colder, eyes shadowed by everything that had happened. But it was him. The man I thought I'd lost beneath the city. "How?" I whispered. "They thought they killed me," he said. "Marco's bullet missed my heart by inches. Sarah found me before they did." I looked toward the shadows. Sarah stood a few meters away, silent, watching us. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, tears burning in my eyes. Because if you knew, you'd never have been brave enough to do what you did. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. You exposed them. You did what I couldn't. I thought I lost you. You did, he said softly. But maybe now, we both get a chance to start again. Som du vento, o som distanta agua batendo no cais. Vos em off de narradora. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I didn't recognize. It wasn't safety. It wasn't peace. It was freedom, fragile, uncertain, but real. He survived. And so did I. Maybe that was enough. But deep down, I knew the story wasn't over. The truth was still out there, waiting to be revealed in full. And as long as it remained, so would I. Som de motor de barco legando. Vos final suave firme. We disappeared again that night. Not to hide, but to rebuild. To turn what was once a secret into a weapon for justice. My father's legacy. His. And now mine. Capitulo final. The legacy of shadows. Som initial. Omar ao aman hessa. Gavotas ao lunge. O som suave de ondas batendo no cais. The world always looks different at dawn. The light doesn't just rise. It reveals. And as the first sun touched the horizon that morning, I realized I had spent my entire life running from shadows that weren't mine. Now, I was standing in the light again. 3 months had passed since the night at the docks, since he returned from the dead. We had vanished just like before. But this time, we didn't hide to escape. We hid to rebuild. Together. Som de laptop sendo aberto. Vos suave de narradora en quanto digita. We moved constantly. Different cities, new names, quiet lives. He recovered slowly, but the fire in his eyes never faded. At night, he'd sit by the window, staring out at the stars, and I'd know he was counting ghosts. Do you ever regret it? I asked him once. Which part? He replied. All of it. He paused. No. Because it led me to you. His answer didn't fix the past, but it softened the silence between us. We weren't lovers. Not in the ordinary sense. We were survivors, bound by truth, pain, and the weight of everything we couldn't undo. And in that strange quiet bond, I found something stronger than love. Something that would keep me alive long after he was gone. Som de notificaco. Vos de narradora tensa. One morning, Sarah sent us a message. Encrypted. Urgent. They're collapsing, she wrote. The network you built. It's working. But the ones still in power will burn the city before they let the truth take them down. I looked at him. He didn't hesitate. Then we finish it, he said. That's when we decided to do the one thing my father never dared. Bring everything to light. All at once. Names, files, recordings. The entire web. It would destroy them. But it would destroy us too. And somehow that felt right. Som de helicopteros ao lunge. Barulho de cidade crescendo. We returned to the city one last time. The same streets where everything began. The same skyline my father once looked at, believing truth had a chance. We set up the transmission from an abandoned broadcast tower on the edge of the city. One last echo of rebellion. Every news network, every social feed, every encrypted system would receive the truth at the same time. As the servers powered up, I looked at him. His hands were steady. Mine were not. Are you ready? I asked. I've been ready since the day they killed your father, he said. The screens flickered to life. The files began to upload. Each percentage rising slowly. Painfully. 20%. 45%. 70%. Then, static. Power surge. The lights flickered. They found us, he muttered. Footsteps thundered down the metal stairs. Shouts. Orders. The sound of boots. He grabbed his weapon, positioning himself near the door. Keep it running, he said. I can help. No. Not this time. I hesitated, heart pounding. You come back to me, I whispered. I will, he lied. Som de disparos. Estel hacos. Barulho de luta. Respiracao acelerada. The room shook with gunfire. Sparks lit the air like lightning. He moved like a shadow. Fast, precise, relentless. But there were too many of them. One bullet hit the console. Another grazed my arm. Pain flared. But I didn't stop typing. The upload reached 90%. I could see the world flickering across the screens, the files spilling into every network. Truth being born. Then I heard it. That sound I'll never forget. The sound of his body hitting the ground. No! I turned. He was down. Blood spreading beneath him. He looked at me, barely breathing. Finish it, he rasped. You're not leaving me again. Elena, please. The upload hit 100%. And then silence. Som de vento. Sirens ao lunge. Radio legando com voces de reporters sobre escándalos. By the next morning, the world was on fire. Names. Faces. Secrets. Everything came out. Politicians fell. Corporations crumbled. The organization that had haunted generations was gone. Not with a bang, but with the truth. I watched it all unfold from a train leaving the city. The same city that took everything from me and still, somehow, gave me purpose. Beside me, his locket rested in my hand. Inside it, a single line from my father's handwriting. Something I'd never noticed before. Truth is not light. It's fire. It burns to cleanse. And maybe that was what this was all along. A cleansing. Som de trem se afastando. Vos de narradora mais suave, mais distante. I never told the world my name. To them, I was just a voice, the whisper that broke an empire. But somewhere, in the ashes of that empire, I like to think my father's soul rests easier. And his. And all those who never got their chance. Sometimes, at night, I dream of that cabin again. The smell of pine. The snow falling quietly outside. The peace I once mistook for safety. I wake up smiling. Because now I know, safety isn't hiding. It's truth. It's freedom. It's the courage to stand in the fire and not look away. Som de piano suave. Trilha final emotional. Vos em off, ultima fala de narradora. He once told me we were shadows, living between what's right and what's real. But I think he was wrong. We weren't shadows. We were light. Hidden too long in the dark.